Charity breakfast tragedy. On an evening in 2017, 20-year-old Caitlyn Nelson arrived at Sacred Heart University in Fairfield, Connecticut, to take part in a charity event organized on campus. Sacred Heart University sits in a residential corner of Fairfield, a mid-sized city on the southwestern edge of Connecticut. The campus is known for its tight-knit student community, and charity events were a regular fixture of student life there. The event Nelson attended that evening had been organized with a straightforward purpose: raise money for a cause, bring students together, and have a good time doing it. The contest was put together by a campus sorority as part of a Greek Week fundraiser, with proceeds going to a nonprofit dedicated to preventing child abuse. And the university had signed off on the format ahead of time. The format was familiar. Students would compete to eat as many pancakes as possible within a set time frame. It was the kind of event that had been held at colleges and community centers across the country without serious incident, the sort of activity that reads as wholesome on a flyer and draws a crowd without much concern. Nelson was 20 years old. She was a student at the university, part of the same campus community that had organized the evening's event. She was a social work major and by most accounts was working toward a future helping children in medical settings. The atmosphere around the competition was relaxed. These were students who knew each other, surrounded by the ordinary noise of a fundraiser, tables, food, spectators cheering participants on. There was nothing in the setup that suggested danger. The pancakes were a standard item. The challenge was a matter of speed and appetite, nothing more unusual than that. The competition began. Nelson started eating. Moments into the challenge, she began to choke. The pancakes, as they were chewed and compacted in the process of rapid eating, had formed a dense paste-like mass. That mass moved into her airway and lodged there. The consistency of the material made it particularly difficult to dislodge. Chewed pancake, soft and starchy, does not behave the way a firm object does when it becomes an obstruction. It conforms to the shape of the passage it blocks. It does not shift easily. 2 nursing students who happened to be in the crowd were among the first to reach her and began emergency first aid before police and paramedics could arrive. But the obstruction was already too severe to clear by hand. Nelson could not clear her airway. Emergency responders were called and arrived at the scene. The obstruction was addressed, but oxygen had already been cut off long enough to cause severe damage. Nelson suffered significant brain damage as a direct result of oxygen deprivation. She was transported for medical care and placed under the observation of a medical team. The damage that had been done in the minutes her brain went without adequate oxygen was not reversible. She did not recover. 3 days after the incident at Sacred Heart University, Caitlyn Nelson was pronounced dead. The cause was asphyxiation resulting in fatal hypoxic brain injury sustained during the charity pancake eating event on campus. In the aftermath, Nelson's family pursued a wrongful death lawsuit against the university, arguing that a food known to compact densely should never have been used as the centerpiece of a speed-eating contest without medical staff standing by. The case was eventually settled, and it became one of the most frequently cited examples in the years that followed. Whenever schools debated whether to allow eating contests on campus at all, Denver donut collapse. In 2017, 42-year-old Travis Maloof walked into a local bakery in Denver, Colorado, and entered a food challenge posted at the counter. Denver's food challenge scene in the mid-2010s was not unusual for a mid-sized American city. Local restaurants and bakeries regularly posted timed eating challenges on boards and social media, offering prizes or recognition to customers who could complete them. The challenge at this particular bakery had a specific format. A contestant had 80 seconds to finish a single glazed donut. The donut was not a standard item. It weighed half a pound, a dense glazed mass significantly larger than anything sold in a standard dozen. Maloof was 42 years old. He had come to the bakery and chosen to attempt the challenge. The 80-second clock was a tight window for the volume of food involved, and the challenge by design required fast, continuous eating, without the deliberate pacing a person would normally apply to a meal. Other customers may have been present. The bakery environment was small and enclosed. The counter where contestants stood to attempt the challenge put participants directly in view of staff and anyone nearby. The clock started. Maloof began eating the donut. In order to finish within 80 seconds, he had to consume large pieces quickly. The donut's density and its glazed, compacted texture meant each piece required force to chew and swallow under time pressure. At some point during the attempt, a mass of donut material lodged in his airway. The blockage was significant. Maloof collapsed at the counter. Emergency services were called immediately. Responders arrived and attempted to clear the obstruction and restore breathing. The asphyxiation had progressed. Attempts to revive him were unsuccessful. Travis Maloof was pronounced dead. The cause of death was asphyxiation sustained during the donut eating challenge at the bakery in Denver, Colorado. His death prompted renewed scrutiny of novelty food challenges advertised by small businesses, many of which are run informally, without the kind of safety planning a large public event might require, and without any requirement that staff be trained to respond to a severe airway obstruction. Python prize fatal. In 2012, 32-year-old Edward Archbold entered a contest at a reptile store in Deerfield Beach, Florida, where the grand prize was a live python. The store that hosted the competition was a reptile retailer, a business that dealt in live animals and the supplies needed to keep them. Deerfield Beach is a coastal city in Broward County, and the store had organized the event as a promotional competition. The prize, a live python, was the draw. To win it, contestants had to consume the most insects within the parameters of the challenge. The specific insects involved were live superworms and giant cockroaches, both of which are large-bodied invertebrates, commonly sold as feeder animals in the reptile trade. Multiple contestants entered. The contest was structured as a formal competition with a clear winner to be determined. Archbold was 32 years old. He entered with the stated goal of winning the python. The environment inside the store would have been familiar to anyone in that community. Terrariums, cages, the ambient noise of a retail space built around live animals. Staff were present to manage the event. Other competitors were there. The challenge was unusual by most standards, but within the subculture of competitive and novelty eating, it had a defined format. Competitions built around live insects were, by that point, an established, if fringe, corner of novelty eating in the United States, more often associated with carnival sideshows and reality television dares than with a formal contest with rules and a judge. What made this event different from a hot dog or pie contest was the material itself. Live cockroaches and superworms do not behave like inert food once they reach the mouth. They can still be moving as they are chewed, which changes how a person handles them compared to something static on a plate, and it changes how quickly a contestant tends to try to get the material down and out of the way. The contest proceeded. Archbold consumed the required insects. He won. He was outside the store when he collapsed. The contest was over. The prize had been determined. Whatever Archbold had planned to do next did not happen. He went down outside the building shortly after the competition had concluded. Emergency responders were called to the scene. Archbold was unresponsive when they arrived. Medical personnel attempted to revive him. He could not be stabilized. An autopsy was conducted following his death. The examination confirmed the cause. Insect body parts had obstructed Archbold's airway during or immediately after the consumption of the contest material. The blockage had caused asphyxiation. Investigators later noted that the hard exoskeletons of the cockroaches, rather than the soft-bodied superworms, appeared to be the primary culprit, since chitin does not break down or compress the way most contest foods do, and can remain sharp-edged and rigid even after being chewed. Edward Archbold was pronounced dead. The autopsy confirmed death by choking, caused by insect body parts obstructing his airway following the live bug-eating contest at the reptile store in Deerfield Beach, Florida. The case drew national attention at the time, partly because it did not fit the usual profile of a food challenge death. It had nothing to do with sugar, starch, or grease. It underscored a broader point that pathologists in the field have made repeatedly. Almost any food under contest conditions can become a hazard if it is consumed fast enough and in large enough quantity. Marshmallow stage collapse. In 2023, 37-year-old Natalie Buys attended a fundraising event at a rugby club in Bidau, Wales, and took part in a challenge in front of a live audience. Bidau is a village in Rhondda Cynon Taf, a county borough in South Wales. Rugby clubs in Welsh communities serve as social hubs, and fundraising events held at them draw local residents across a range of ages. The event at the club that evening had been organized to raise money, and it included a series of participatory challenges to entertain the crowd and generate donations. Buys was a 37-year-old mother and a member of the local community, working as an accountant, and her eldest son played for the club's under-10 side, which was the very team the fundraiser had been organized to support. She was there to participate, as many others were, after being called up onto the stage. The challenge she entered had a simple format. Contestants would fit as many marshmallows into their mouths as possible. It is the kind of game that appears harmless at a glance. Marshmallows are soft. They are associated with children's snacks and campfire treats. The risk embedded in the format is not immediately obvious to most people. A single marshmallow is pliable and compressible. Multiple marshmallows packed into a mouth begin to interact with one another. They absorb moisture from saliva. As they do, they expand. They consolidate into a denser mass than any individual piece would suggest. Busts stood on stage. Spectators were watching. The event had the energy of a community fundraiser, familiar faces, people who had gathered for a shared purpose, the low-level noise of an evening at a social club. She began placing marshmallows into her mouth. The mass of marshmallows expanded as they absorbed moisture. The material blocked her trachea. She choked. She collapsed, in full view of the audience around her. Witnesses responded. Resuscitation was attempted on scene. The people around her acted. The attempts were not successful. Emergency services were involved. The obstruction to her airway had caused damage that could not be reversed by the resuscitation efforts made at the venue. Natalie Buys was pronounced dead. The cause was asphyxiation resulting from tracheal obstruction by the expanded marshmallow material during the fundraising challenge at the rugby club in Beta, Wales. Her death was formally reported to South Wales Police and to the region's health and safety regulator, and a coroner's inquest was opened to examine what risk assessment, if any, had been carried out before the game was introduced to the crowd. The entertainer, who had hosted the game for more than 15 years at similar community events later, said he had stopped running it altogether. One chip cardiac death. In 2023, 14-year-old Harris Wolobah collapsed in Worcester, Massachusetts, after participating in the viral one-chip challenge, and later died from cardiopulmonary arrest. The one-chip challenge was a widely circulated social media phenomenon during the early 2020s. The format involved consuming a single tortilla chip, sold in individual packaging, coated in a concentrated blend of Carolina Reaper and Naga Viper pepper powders. Both pepper varieties rank among the highest measured on the Scoville scale, a standard unit used to quantify capsaicin concentration. The chip was commercially available and marketed as an extreme heat challenge. Participants were encouraged to film their reactions and post the footage online. The challenge spread rapidly through social media platforms and became a common fixture in school environments, where peer participation and filming created a cycle of peer pressure and imitation. Wolobah was a high school student in Worcester, Massachusetts. He was 14 years old. The social conditions around the challenge at that age and in that environment were straightforward. Peers were doing it, the videos were visible, and participation carried a certain social currency. He consumed the chip, reportedly during the school day, according to reporting on the case at the time. Unlike most of the other cases in this list, the one-chip challenge did not depend on an organized event, a stage, or an entry fee. It spread the way a lot of viral dares do, through short clips passed between phones, with each new video functioning as both a demonstration and an invitation for the next person to try it. That structure made it almost impossible to regulate at the point of consumption. A school could ban the product from its halls, but it could not stop a student from buying one on the way home and filming the attempt there instead. Shortly after eating it, Wolobah experienced severe abdominal pain. He collapsed. Emergency responders were contacted and he received medical attention, but his condition was not survivable. Wolobah had an underlying heart condition. The medical examiner who reviewed his case conducted a formal review and issued findings on the cause of death. The medical examiner determined that Wolobah died from cardiopulmonary arrest. The arrest was attributed to a high concentration of capsaicin, the active compound in the pepper powders coating the chip. That concentration in a person with an underlying heart condition produced a fatal cardiovascular event. The examiner's findings were specific. The capsaicin level and the pre-existing cardiac vulnerability together caused the arrest. Harris Wolobah was pronounced dead. The medical examiner confirmed the cause as cardiopulmonary arrest induced by high capsaicin concentration in an individual with an underlying heart condition, sustained after participating in the one-chip challenge in Worcester, Massachusetts. His death led the manufacturer to pull the product from store shelves nationwide and prompted several school districts to send formal warnings to parents about the challenge, since by that point it had become one of the most widely imitated food-based dares among teenagers in the country. Momo bet death. In 2023, 25-year-old Bipin Kumar Paswan accepted an informal bet with friends in Gopalganj, Bihar, India, and died before the night was over. Gopalganj is a district in the northwestern part of Bihar, one of India's most densely populated states. The area is predominantly rural and agricultural. Paswan was 25 years old and living in the district at the time. The circumstances of the bet were informal in every sense. No organized event, no venue, no officials, no medical personnel standing by. It was a group of friends, a wager, and a quantity of food. The bet was set at 1,000 rupees. The challenge was to eat 150 momos in a single sitting. Momos are steamed dumplings, a common food across South Asia and particularly popular in northern India and Nepal. Each one is a compact package of dough filled with meat or vegetables, soft but substantial. 150 of them represents an enormous volume of food by any measure. The bet framed the challenge as a test of appetite and endurance, the kind of informal dare that passes between people without formal consideration of what it requires of the body. Bets of this kind are common across much of India, where informal eating and drinking wagers between friends are treated as a normal part of socializing, rather than as anything resembling a structured competition. There is no registration, no age check, no waiver, and critically no one present whose job is to step in if something goes wrong. The same volume of food attempted at a sanctioned, medically staffed competitive eating event would likely have triggered an intervention long before Paswan reached anything close to 150 dumplings. Paswan accepted. He began eating. He consumed a massive quantity of the dumplings within a compressed period of time. The friends who were present watched the attempt. At some point during or after the consumption, Paswan lost consciousness at the scene. He was transported to a hospital. The medical team at the hospital assessed him. He was pronounced dead. The exact confirmed medical cause of Paswan's death was not publicly detailed beyond the sequence of events. A large volume of food consumed rapidly, followed by loss of consciousness, followed by death. The specific physiological mechanism was not disclosed in the available record. He was 25 years old. Bipin Kumar Paswan was pronounced dead at the hospital in Gopalganj, Bihar, India. Exact circumstances of the specific cause were not disclosed beyond the documented sequence of consumption, collapse, and death. Cases like this rarely receive the kind of formal inquest that more publicized Western incidents do, and Paswan's death is a reminder that informal food bets between friends, with no medical safeguard of any kind, carry the same underlying risks as an organized contest, even though they leave far less of a public record behind. Baseball game tragedy. In 2019, 41-year-old Dana Hutchings collapsed and died during an amateur taco eating contest held at a minor league baseball game in Fresno, California. Fresno sits in the center of California's San Joaquin Valley. Minor league baseball in mid-sized American cities has long incorporated promotional events and between-inning contests as part of the fan experience. Taco eating competitions in particular became a recurring feature at stadium events in the 2010s, drawing amateur participants from the crowd with the promise of a novelty competition and a degree of public recognition. The event at this game was structured as an amateur contest, meaning the participants were not professional competitive eaters. They were regular attendees who had signed up for a stadium promotion. Hutchings was 41 years old. He entered the contest as an amateur participant. The stadium setting placed contestants in front of a live crowd in an open-air environment. The format required eating tacos as fast as possible with no restriction on method, which by its nature incentivized speed over caution. Between-inning promotions like this one are typically run by the team's marketing or entertainment staff rather than by anyone with medical training, and contestants are usually pulled from season ticket holders or fans who sign up at the gate that day. The appeal for both the team and the participants is the same low-stakes, high-visibility format that makes these contests popular everywhere else on this list. A quick fun diversion between innings over almost as soon as it starts. The contest began. Witnesses who were present and who later spoke to the record noted that Hutchings was eating noticeably faster than the other contestants. They also noted he was not chewing properly. He was moving through the food at a rate that did not allow sufficient processing of each portion before the next was introduced. Approximately 7 minutes into the event, he collapsed. Paramedics were at or near the stadium, as is standard for large public events. They were called to the scene and responded. Their assessment identified an airway blockage. Efforts to clear the obstruction were made. The paramedics worked to restore breathing and circulation. Those efforts did not succeed. Dana Hutchings was pronounced dead. The cause of death was asphyxiation, sustained during the amateur taco eating contest at the minor league baseball stadium in Fresno, California, approximately 7 minutes into the competition. In the years since, several minor league teams have quietly scaled back or eliminated amateur eating contests from their promotional lineups, replacing them with lower-risk fan activities that do not involve competitive food consumption at all. 4th of July airway block. In 2014, 47-year-old Walter Eagletail entered a local hot dog eating competition in Keister, South Dakota on the 4th of July and died when a piece of hot dog became lodged in his throat. Custer is a small city in the Black Hills of South Dakota, known primarily as a gateway to Custer State Park and the surrounding national forest. 4th of July celebrations there carry the character of a small-town American holiday. Outdoor gatherings, community events, food, and competition. Hot dog eating contests on Independence Day are a national tradition at every scale, from the famous professional event in New York to informal local contests organized at parks and fairgrounds. The contest Eagle Tail entered was a local event, the kind organized with a folding table, a crowd of familiar faces, and the uncomplicated format of seeing who could eat the most hot dogs in the shortest time. Eagle Tail was 47 years old. He was a participant in the speed round of the competition, the phase that placed the highest demand on rapid consumption. Speed rounds remove the natural pacing that a person applies to food. They require continuous swallowing without the intervals that allow the throat to clear and reset between bites. The audience at a local 4th of July contest is close. The atmosphere is communal and loud, the kind of setting where participation feels natural and the stakes feel low. The speed round was underway. Eagle Tail was eating. A piece of hot dog lodged in his throat. He was unable to dislodge it. He could not breathe. First responders were called. They arrived at the scene and began CPR immediately. The responders worked to dislodge the obstruction through their efforts on site. The object could not be moved. CPR continued. The efforts sustained by those first responders were not enough to restore his airway or his condition. Walter Eagle Tail was pronounced dead. The cause of death was asphyxiation resulting from a piece of hot dog lodging in his airway during the speed round of the local 4th of July hot dog eating competition in Custer, South Dakota in 2014. Public health researchers have singled out hot dogs specifically as one of the most dangerous shapes of food a person can choke on, because a cylindrical piece can form a near-complete seal against the walls of the airway, in a way that irregularly shaped foods often do not, which is part of why the food has been linked to a disproportionate share of choking deaths in both children and adults. We Water Challenge. On January 12, 2007, 28-year-old Jennifer Strange participated in a contest organized by a Sacramento, California radio station and died at her home hours later from water intoxication. The contest was called Hold Your Wii for a Wii. It was a promotional event organized by a local radio station to coincide with the launch of the Nintendo Wii gaming console, a product in significant demand at the time. The premise was straightforward. Contestants would drink large quantities of water, and whoever could hold the most without urinating would win the console. The event was broadcast. Listeners could follow along. Station staff managed the competition and announced results over the air. Strange was 28 years old and a mother. She entered the contest to win the gaming console. The appeal was tangible and domestic, a desirable product for a household with children. She was not entering a professional eating or drinking circuit. She was a member of the public who saw a promotion and signed up. The contest proceeded in rounds. Contestants drank. They were not permitted to urinate. Each round added to the cumulative volume consumed. Strange participated through multiple rounds, drinking more than a gallon of water within the contest's time frame. Other contestants had withdrawn before her. Station staff were present throughout. The contest concluded. Strange did not win. She left the station and went home. In the hours following the contest, the physiological process that had been set in motion by consuming that volume of water without elimination continued. Severe hyponatremia is the condition in which excess water in the body dilutes the concentration of sodium in the blood to a critically low level. Sodium is essential to the regulation of fluid inside and outside of cells. When blood sodium drops severely, cells absorb water and swell. In the brain, that swelling has nowhere to go. The skull does not expand. The pressure builds. The condition is called cerebral edema, and it is fatal when it reaches sufficient severity. Strange was found at her home. She had died there. An investigation followed. The radio station faced legal consequences as a result of the event. The contest had been conducted without medical oversight and without limits that would have prevented the lethal volume of water from being consumed. Jennifer Strange was pronounced dead at her home in Sacramento, California, on January 12, 2007. The cause of death was severe hyponatremia, causing fatal cerebral edema, sustained as a direct result of her participation in the Hold Your Wii for a Wii contest, organized by the radio station earlier that day. Her death remains one of the most cited cases in discussions of water drinking contests, in part because it demonstrated that a substance as ordinary and essential as water can become lethal in large enough quantity over a short enough period, a fact that had received relatively little public attention before her case made headlines. Sticky rice collapse. In 2016, 28-year-old Yuji Toshima choked and collapsed during a speed-eating event in Hakone, Shiga Prefecture, Japan, and died in hospital 3 days later without regaining consciousness. Hakone is a mid-sized city in Shiga Prefecture, situated on the eastern shore of Lake Biwa, Japan's largest freshwater lake. The city has a strong identity connected to local agriculture and traditional food culture. In 2016, a local agricultural cooperative organized a promotional event in the area specifically to celebrate and promote locally grown rice. The format chosen for part of the event was a speed eating competition, a contest format that had grown considerably in public visibility across Japan in the years prior. The food chosen for the competition was inari zushi. Inari zushi is a specific preparation in Japanese cuisine, a pouch made from a borage, which is thinly sliced tofu that has been deep fried, opened, and marinated in a sweet and savory broth, then filled with cooked, seasoned rice. The rice used is typically short grain, which becomes dense and sticky when cooked. The pouches are compact, sweet, and soft on the outside, but the rice filling is cohesive and does not break apart easily once swallowed in large pieces. The challenge format required contestants to eat 5 inari zushi in under 3 minutes. This was a tight time window for 5 full pieces of that food. To complete the task, a contestant would need to eat each pouch in rapid succession, swallowing quickly between pieces or combining multiple in a single effort. The cooperative had organized the event to draw community participation and attention to local rice production. The setting was a community event with cooperative members, local residents, and officials present. Toshima was 28 years old. He entered the competition as a contestant. The 3-minute clock was the defining constraint. Everything about the challenge required prioritizing speed over deliberate eating. The competition began. Toshima ate the first piece. He ate the second. On the 5th piece, he choked. The sticky, cohesive nature of the rice filling made the material particularly difficult to dislodge once it had become lodged in the airway. Unlike a firm object, sticky rice compresses and adheres to the surfaces around it. Toshima collapsed at the scene. Emergency responders were contacted. He was transported to a hospital, where a medical team received him and began treatment. He did not regain consciousness at any point during the 3 days that followed. The medical team's efforts over that period could not reverse the condition caused by the airway obstruction and subsequent collapse. 3 days after the event at the Agricultural Cooperative's promotional competition in Hakone, Shiga Prefecture, Yuji Toshima was pronounced dead. He had not regained consciousness at any point following the incident. The cause was asphyxiation sustained when he choked on the 5th piece of inari zushi during the speed-eating event in 2016. The case became part of a broader conversation in Japan at the time about the safety of televised and community speed-eating contests, several of which had already drawn criticism for pushing amateur participants toward extreme portions and extreme time limits with little to no medical presence on site. What these cases have in common. Taken together, these 10 deaths span more than 15 years in 4 countries and involve foods as different as pancakes, donuts, cockroaches, marshmallows, chili-coated chips, dumplings, tacos, hot dogs, water, and sticky rice. What connects them is not the food itself, but the format. In nearly every case, the person who died was not a professional competitive eater. They were students, parents, amateurs, and members of the public who entered a contest built around speed, volume, or both, at events that in most instances had no medical personnel standing by and no formal safety plan in place if something went wrong. Professional competitive eating, by contrast, has moved toward more structured oversight in recent years, with major sanctioned contests requiring on-site paramedics, defined rules around chewing and swallowing, and disqualification procedures for contestants who appear to be in distress. That level of oversight is almost never present at the kind of grassroots charity or promotional events described here, which is precisely where most of these deaths occurred. The gap between how professional eating events are run and how everyday food challenges are run remains, in the years since these cases, one of the central arguments raised by families, safety regulators, and public health officials whenever the subject comes up again. Several of these cases also led directly to changes on the ground. Sacred Heart University's settlement with Caitlyn Nelson's family became a reference point cited in later lawsuits against other schools and organizations that hosted eating contests. The manufacturer behind the one-chip challenge pulled the product from shelves nationwide after Wolobah's death, closing off the exact item that had spread through classrooms and social media feeds. Natalie Buys's death triggered a formal jury inquest in Wales, specifically to examine whether any risk assessment had been done before a party host introduced the Marshmallow game to a room full of adults who had shown up expecting nothing more than a bingo night. In each instance, an event that had been treated as routine, low-stakes entertainment was retroactively recognized as something that required the kind of planning normally reserved for far more obviously dangerous activities. None of this means every eating contest is destined to end in tragedy. The vast majority of pancake breakfasts, hot dog contests, and marshmallow games conclude the way they are meant to, with nothing more serious than a full stomach. But the cases collected here share a pattern worth remembering. In ordinary food, a compressed amount of time, an audience, and the absence of anyone on hand who is trained and ready to respond if a contestant's airway closes. That combination is what turned 10 separate celebrations on 4 different continents into the deaths described above. If you want to see more, click the video on screen now.